Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriel Hirschberger, and I'm the host of the 20 Mile March podcast. And today on the show, I have Kyle Gray, who's the author of The Story Engine and also an expert content creator. And we've decided that the focus of this program was going to be on how I can be seen as an expert in the physical therapy clinic market. And so we decided to just try to create a content marketing plan live right on this podcast. And so I'm super excited about what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna put it all out there, and then I think something magical is gonna happen. And so Kyle, thanks for taking the time and for sharing what you're going to share with us as an author, someone who knows a lot about content marketing. And so let's just jump right in. Does that sound cool to you?
That sounds great, Gabriel. And thanks so much for having me. I'm excited. I think, what I want to do is I'll just open up. We'll kind of go through the 30,000 foot view of my process. I'll describe a little bit about how it works and how other people can apply it. And then we'll work through it a little bit with you so people can see actually how it's all made.
Yeah, how you would apply it, right? I'll be like a guinea pig here. So for your process. And so we're going to start off with like the 30,000 foot view of looking at content, I guess. And would you say it philosophical way?
It is. Some of the first things I ask, and what I want to get from you is like what I like to understand before we really get into the nuts and bolts of things is to just figure out like why, what are your roots, where are you coming from, and so in your case, I'd like to hear like. You're a speech therapist, and you've told me a couple of stories about working with your clients, and I've sensed a lot of just passion for helping these people in your own speech therapy practice. And I know that that's a little bit different than physical therapy, but I'd like to know why did you become a speech therapist? What attracted you to that profession originally?
Right. It's a great question. And I think that I really like to hear people's stories. One of the things that I love the most is being the one who gets to spend 45 minutes talking to someone who is in their 70s, 80s, 90 years of age. For example, I've also worked with children as well, and they say the darndest things as well. Mm-hmm. But it's like I have an opportunity to basically share in that person's legacy. I've talked with rocket engineers who worked on the Saturn V rockets for the Rocketdyne Corporation, and I've talked with some like really amazing, beautiful people, and then I get a way to carry on their legacy. Like I've learned that those people a year later have passed away, and I be able to sort of carry on their stories because I've listened, because speech therapy is a ton of just communication and expressing yourself. And so like that to me is like the most beautiful part. It's like that's the deepest human connection that I can experience. And so that's like the best part for me and like what I love about being a speech therapist is this ability to communicate and like have a deep connection with people that I might be the last person that's had this kind of deep conversation about someone's life on this planet. It's pretty astounding.
Yeah. And I think that's incredible. And I think that there's already a lot of interesting things that I'm seeing you're bringing to a totally unique market where I think what you do with chatbots, when you are working with physical therapists, helping them build chatbots for their process, for their things, is you're helping them listen in a lot of ways. You're creating a robot that listens and kind of hones in on a problem and will guide people to exactly what they need. And you are in many ways providing that same experience at scale. And so, what you're doing, what you've brought in your own practice and your own skill set, you're trying to bring to other people. And yeah, it's no surprise that you've chosen physical therapists to work with, because you were mentioning just before the show that it's a language you speak. They share a lot of common values, and they help people in a lot of ways. And I can really attest to that. I've used physical therapists before, and they've dramatically increased the quality of life I've experienced. And so I think that's really cool, and that's really interesting. And similarly to you, I'm recently moving my business more towards working with health and wellness entrepreneurs. I was mentioning this to you before, just because of actually bringing in my own history of overcoming several different health issues and having to understand, okay, well, how does my body work? How does my adrenal glands impact different things down the road, or all of these things. And I've had to learn a lot about myself, about my health, and how to navigate that these days. And so one gift that I've discovered in my own work is being able to take what a doctor can say in really detailed, the really brilliant way that they say it, and then translate it into something that everybody can say, or everybody can understand and know the value. Uh-huh. And I'm seeing you doing a very similar thing with your chatbots. Mm-hmm. And so another great roots kind of question that we can find, I always find that in the people that you admire, the skills, the things that you admire about these people are usually existent, if not latent, just kind of like dormant abilities or qualities in yourself. So there's usually a lot of great ground looking at, like, who are the people in your past that you've really admired? Who are some big mentors? Who was your close friend, a family member that's really inspired you? Who are the people that have just made a deep impact on your life, especially in a positive way? And let's see does anybody come to mind right away for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a friend that I went to school with, and he's become a very successful farmer and author. Mm-hmm. He's grown a small, like less than 5-acre farm with 5 or 6 greenhouses. And now he's become an expert in he's adapted lean industry to farming practices, and is now has speaking engagements across the country during the winter. But he's still growing a farm, and he's still raising a family, and he's totally supporting his life, his lifestyle of being someone who likes that agrarian life, like culture and experience. And he's able to support himself growing salads and vegetables and selling them at market and at wholesale. And he's always been, I've helped him at a time a lot during the years post college and into my career as a speech therapist, and in the time of period before I was a speech therapist. And he allowed me to live at his property and volunteer and just learn about growing. And his work ethic, I really admired the amount of hard work that he did. I also just admire his love of farming, his love of growing things. And he's super detailed, and he basically has multiple PhDs, in my opinion, of farming knowledge. He has all this knowledge about when to plant things and how, and when to harvest them. And he keeps really detailed records of season to season, and also what sells, what doesn't sell. And he tracks waste, and he tries to maximize the amount of production and eliminate waste. And he's always been somebody who I've looked up to as a small business owner, but as a mentor, someone that I could just share really my thoughts and feelings without really ever feeling judged, and just a very good human being, very grounded, and someone who has high morals and high principles. So
I think that's great. And I can see already there's so many different connections that I would see here. Of course, the first one, the most obvious one is, it's a very much a metaphor and not so much a metaphor at the same time, where he's an entrepreneur and he's building and growing things that take a lot of time. And, you just can't, like a lot of us as entrepreneurs, when we show up to our kind of empty plot of land, we can't expect just like amazing vegetables and crops to just pop out of it. It takes a lot of time to till the soil and understand the earth. And that's a lot of that process. And you admire his independence. Not only, he's able to financially take care of himself, but I'm sure the farm provides for him in a lot of ways that's just totally unique in this modern time. And so, but what I like about that and what I see in that connection, there's a deep connection with independence. The people that you work with in your speech therapy, you're helping them become independent again. Because if they can't communicate, then they've really lost a lot of power in their own lives. And you're helping bring that same thing that you admire into there. And so there's story elements in that. And that's also the same thing that these physical therapists are doing. Because if you're going around with a bad hip, a bad knee, or whatever's going on, you've lost a lot of independence. You've lost a lot of autonomy. And so you're helping your clients serve people in this same way. And not only are you helping, you're helping your clients' but right. Your own clients they're also trying to cultivate their own farm. They're trying to grow things. And it's hard being out there as a physical therapist right now and getting your message out and getting heard and getting recognized. And so you're also helping them, cultivate their own fields, grow their practice, become independent, and grow into the person that you admire so much in your friend. And so again, there's lots of story elements inside of there that you can bring forward, relating him and how much you admire him to not only your story with your patients, the patients of your clients, and how you work with your clients.
Wow. Yeah, I've really never thought about that in this way at all. And that's what your skill is your depth of knowledge in that area is. It's very enlightening to me. I've never really thought about the way that you're dovetailing, and basically you're looking at the similar threads that are weaving between these three different tapestries, and you're suggesting to create the content and stories that weave across all of these with that singularity and that thread that combines all of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it. I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make when approaching content marketing is they tend to see it similar to like Facebook advertising or building a landing page or a sales funnel, which it all is related to all of those things. But we immediately, I'm sure your first impulse is like, how many blog posts can I write about chatbots? But really what we want with content marketing is not just to educate our audience, but we really want to give them a chance to build a human connection with us. And we don't give them an opportunity to do that through only tactical posts. And I think tactical posts and things like that are very good and very powerful. But the things that are going to make the difference for your blog, the things that are going to get people through the buyer's journey with you, is understanding your own story and your own roots. And this is actually one of the biggest processes of how we differentiate you, because we can differentiate in a lot of ways. We can choose to do a podcast instead of a written blog, or we can choose topic X instead of topic Y. But the ultimate differentiator is your own story and what your own history is and your unique perspectives. And so if you can understand that and really get clear on that, then it helps you leverage it not only in just one blog post that you're writing, but this helps you create a much better About Me page. This helps you tell your story when you're introducing yourself on your email series for new subscribers. It turns into a powerful thing that you can share from the stage. And so by getting really clear on these story roots, then you can bring a lot more power to what you're doing. Where I would say, like, a lot of people, like I was saying earlier, usually just try to dive right into a tactic. They try to find, I want to rank for this exact keyword, and I'm going to build a blog post and stuff it full of that keyword. And I think,
right.
I think that's all fine, but when you connect to this, and not only that, but really when you start doing this, and I'm feeling this right now, but there's a feeling that happens, a real feeling and a real connection. It roots you deeper. It gives you like it connects with a reason why you're getting up in the morning. And so your content, again, like a lot of us, content's difficult to make. No matter if it's a podcast, a video, or an article, it takes a lot more time than any of us ever expect it will. And it's still like, no matter what, even with me, I've written maybe 500,000 words now on the internet, and still like writing that first draft is just feels like a total grind.
Right.
And so, but if you can understand, your why, the why you're bringing, then you can show up stronger when you create content. You can show up stronger when you're talking with your new clients, when you're helping people, because you're clear on that why, and it just changes your own energy. And I think that's where it's really powerful. It's really exciting, and there can be transformative things happening, within your content and within your business as a whole.
Do you have any tricks or tips about how you deeply connect with your why? Like, do you write in your journal like before you start creating a piece of content, or have you ever done anything like that specifically? Or do you just have like a piece of paper that you look at, something on your wall or a board or something like that?
I think I do. I spend a lot of time reflecting on that. I wonder where my journal is. It's actually down there. I was actually doing an exercise not long ago I learned this from a man named David Bayer, who's a really brilliant mindset coach. And I think this exercise has been copied a lot of times, but basically I drew a circle, and I had different points like my business, my wealth, my personal life, my love life, and a whole bunch of different areas. And then I just rated it on 1 to 10. Like, where are these different things? Like, what am I excited about this? Why am I not excited? And, I try to write down on the things that are lower, like what would a 10 really look like? And so that helps me get a little bit connected with that. And also, kind of understanding your why. I think having somebody help you, just asking these questions, because it's strange, but nobody really ever asks us what seem like very basic fundamental questions, but like, why do you do what you do? And we rarely take the time to think about it, but it's usually.
I think part of that reason is that because as a society, we're taught, I think in school or something, or like an etiquette class, not to ask why, because it can put people a little bit, it can make people feel like a little uncomfortable. And then they get that kind of feeling of a little bit like you have to have the right answer or something, like, and that question is a deep, thought-provoking question that I feel is maybe sometimes something we just don't like asking it, because of the reaction that sometimes that produces with certain people who've never truly asked and sat down with that why.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think it's just an important exercise to do, because I think that in order to make it through as an entrepreneur, you need to be deeply connected with that reason why, because otherwise it will change. It's so easy these days to get swept up in like, well, do I want to, maybe I want to build a 7-figure business now because I saw all these people at this conference talking about 7-figure business and sounds great to me. Like, that's a lot of money. I could use that money, I guess. Or, but having your why is kind of a good guiding thing. And so another good exercise for this is you look through your history, your entrepreneurial origin story, your childhood, growing up, and you try to find observations about the world that you made. And so you notice things in the world, you notice a problem, you notice something's bothered you, you see something's wrong. And usually when you make a list of observations like this from your past, from currently, then you can also see your realizations. So you say, well, okay, so I make option A, like, I noticed that there are people with decades more wisdom than me and the incredible stories from their past, and they're at a point where they can't share any of that or talk about any of that, and they're frustrated and feeling alone right now. So I realized I need to become a speech therapist, not only because I want to help these people out, but I am just interested in what they have to say, because it's a connection to the past that I have. And, perhaps, there might even be, I would suspect that you enjoy reading maybe books about history as a result, and trying to understand kind of the past in a way and bring those lessons back. So that's another good kind of exercise of just going through different stages of your life and trying to remember what you observed and what you took away from it.
That's cool. Yeah, that's interesting. So observe and take an inventory of some past experiences, and then fast forward to today and see, look at the realization you said of like what you've picked, what you've learned from that, and whether you've acted upon that, or how that's whether that's you've taken any of that into consideration, or if it's had a huge impact on your life.
Yeah,
so, very interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things, or there's a lot of potential in there. And again, one of the really good ways when you're really keying in on some of these deep reason why posts, a lot of it will cause feelings of, just like what you were saying, it's hard to answer sometimes, because it really does force us to be vulnerable. When we say like our reason why, we kind of put our cards on the table, speaking, and then that opens us up to criticism in a lot of ways. So I've often seen this, where when somebody's really tapping into a blog post or any kind of content, where they're like, man, I am so afraid to share this because I'm afraid that people are going to show up with tar and pitchforks and whatever at my door and be super mad. And those are the ones, time and time again, that are just the astronomical hits. So that's also like, this is a little bit later down the line, but when you start to feel like, when you're creating the content that you're like, I'm scared about this, that's usually the one that just knocks it out of the park. I've seen it. I used to work for a startup called WP Curve, and I think that a big turning point for their blog, which inspired a book, was for some reason all of the posts I'm thinking of have a lot of profanity in them, but this one is Startup Validation Bullshit. And so Dan was talking about, he was really frustrated when he wrote this post. He wasn't sure about the lean startup methodology, and he actually created a software as a service business that checked all of the boxes of the lean startup, and it was supposed to be just a golden win of a business. Yeah. And when he launched it, it was crickets, even though like it was a perfect lean startup. Right. And then he started his next business, WP Curve. He had 2 weeks of money left and was like desperately needed, and started it and launched, and was making more money within a month or two of that service. And it was totally not checking off all of the lean startup boxes. So he wrote about that, and people really resonated with it. Another powerful one is Mark Manson. It's become a book since then, but it was originally an article, but it was the subtle art of not giving an F word. Right. And so this post, like, he was insanely profane. For some, it's disgusting. I kind of found it hilarious. But it was all about like saying like, we spread what we care about way too thin over way too many things, and it doesn't work. And that was like, it was a really big statement. And actually the profanity and kind of weird, funny sarcasm in the article
Yep.
was like definitely a scary article, and he definitely got a lot of heat for it. But now it's a book that is like an amazing, outstanding, best-selling book.
Yeah.
And so again, there's just case after case of this kind of like, when you really get close to that reason why, you're going to feel scared, but that's a good feeling to feel.
Yeah, a lot of proof, I guess, that when you touch on those emotional things. So, yeah, it just takes courage. It takes courage and the ability to accept that. Okay, some people are going to be critical, and being able to be able to tolerate that discomfort, that feeling. That's the big hurdle, and why so many posts and things like that get deleted, or drafts get deleted because they never see the light of day, because there's this overwhelming fear that of being judged, of being like offending a certain number of people, and really being seen out there. It's a real, it's a big, I'd say, huge force in everything that we do. Trying to be seen in a certain way.
Yeah.
So yes, this goes deep into just each one of our psyches, and the amount of what we're willing to put out there, and how confident and courageous, and what kind of self-worth that we all have, and as in each one of us, that evolves over time, as we grow and just learn to accept what we can control and what we can't control.
Yeah. So another great exercise, now that we've gotten a little bit of why, and we're kind of understanding why we need the reason why is so important. A great exercise and a great tool to do this that I like to work with people on it's called the Big Hairy Audacious Goal. And I really hate the name of it, but it's a very effective tool. And so what this is it's a goal that needs to be really simple. It needs to connect with your story. I like it when it's measurable and it's ambitious, and it's like a 10-year goal. So, for you, it could be something along the lines of, I want to help 1,000 physical therapists impact the lives of 1 million people,
right,
by 2025 or something like that. And so there's a lot of interesting things. So the goal itself, is really powerful, but there's a lot of storytelling tools built right into it if you do it right. For example, when it's that, it connects with your why, because we've already, people are going to, when you say a goal like that, they'll be like, wow, that's really interesting. Why do you have that kind of goal or something like that? It gives you something to talk about in that. But also, you by making it measurable, you create a story within the process of fulfilling the goal. And so by saying like, yeah, I've got this goal, I want to help 1,000 physical therapists. And when you're talking to a physical therapist, now it's changing their perspective. This is almost like a sales thing. Where instead of them thinking, okay, well, what's Gabriel going to do for, me, and what are my goals, and this and that, they're thinking, wow, I could be one of those 1,000. And it connects them with a vision that's bigger than you and what you're doing. And it's not just a sales process, but it's a mission. It's something interesting and powerful. And so that's one of the really great tools that you can use, by just saying, and as it's going along, it's kind of a storyline. Maybe next year you get 10 or 20 or 30 clients, and so now you're in 30, and maybe you write a book, and you sell a couple hundred copies, and you can assume those are physical therapists, but over time you can be, putting together a post on your site and drawing like a little graph going up, and that's exciting. And people will see you achieving this big goal. And by making it really ambitious, by aiming 10 years out, and by just you've got a good goal. If you set it at the time you set it, you're like, how in the world am I going to do that? Because it makes you aim higher. It makes you think differently. And so, yeah, it's so interesting. And some of the most fun I have is just like in this process of not only helping you create a storyline for your business that helps you create content, but yeah, it just like, again, it's like becoming, I think we were talking about this before, but the process of becoming an entrepreneur makes you be a better person. And so with a bigger goal, it'll force you in a lot of ways. And if you start announcing it and sharing it with people, then everybody you meet is going to hold you accountable to your big goal. So it creates this interesting effect.
Yeah. Wow. Whoa. Right. So it connects it connects people to a bigger vision. And then it makes them feel like part of the story, part of the journey that you're on. It makes it seem like it sort of adds a little bit of like social, sort of like case study or social proof in a way without even having it, just because you're sort of on this journey to help people, and you can, and the physical therapist owner can be part of that journey, or they can choose not to be part of it. And many times people want to be part of something. They want to join in and be part of that process, and that, like, we all want to leave a legacy at the end of the day. And so this is sort of giving them a little bit of that legacy feeling. So that's really interesting. And I'd heard of that big, hairy, audacious goal, but I've never heard it quite that explained that way before. So yeah, thank you for that.
Of course. And so another tool, this is probably my favorite one, is it's called a proprietary process. And basically what a proprietary process is if you think back, and you're going to your grandma's house, and your grandma, used to make the best lasagna in the world, or meatloaf, or whatever the case is. But I'm sure that everybody listening, knows what I'm talking about here. And she made her lasagna, better than anybody else. And it was so good that you can't just go to a restaurant and order lasagna anymore, because you're like, oh my God, this isn't grandma's. This is terrible.
Right.
Right. And it's probably like, honestly, grandma's recipe, maybe she had some secret ingredients, and it's probably definitely better than whatever random restaurant. But it's also like, in reality, if you broke it down and like analyze the components, there's not anything too special there. But because it was grandma's lasagna, that's what made it special. So how do we create grandma's lasagna in our business, in what we do? That's the proprietary process. And so by walking people through, I've got this process, and in step one, we're going to examine this part of you, and we're going to work on this. And through step two, it'll look like this, and then this will happen. And then step three, we're finally going to realize your big goal, and this is what it's going to look like. And so if you can break down what you do into specific steps, this has a really powerful effect in a lot of different ways. So first of all, it helps you just talk about what you do in an interesting way, because a lot of us, when we say, like, when we talk about what we're doing, it probably sounds something like, well, yeah, I do a lot of chatbots, and so I figure out the optimal response times. And then the Facebook Messenger looks like this, but there's also whatever, Zap Messenger.
It's boring.
Yeah, well, it's easy. I mean, but we all do it, especially entrepreneurs. We're so bad at it. It's amazing. It's amazing because we talk about it all the time. Entrepreneurs, we're always talking about our businesses, and we're all terrible at it. I have no idea why. And we know it, and we know it, and you can see it in their faces when they're like starting to think about whatever's happening on their phone, or they're like, man, I can't wait to go, grab another beer at the bar or something after this guy's done talking about random stuff. So by getting into that, you kind of, we over focus on exactly what we do. And I'm definitely, guilty of this too. But instead of focusing on these little details and, your day-to-day stuff, which seems like you're embedded in, so of course you're going to talk about it. But instead you go into the how you do this and what happens, through this process. And so it helps you talk about your business in an interesting way. It gives people a clear and complete picture of what you're doing, and it allows them to see themselves going through the process, see themselves getting the results that you get for them. And so it just starts them imagining working with you a lot more than, oh, I can't see myself like whatever, I'm
Can
sure
you
with.
can you give an example of like a bad way to say something, or the typical way, and then like a better way to say how you would do this? So like,
Yes. I'll tell you like this distinction, has turned my business around in the last little while. So before, I would be like, well, I help people, I talk to different businesses and I see like what's going on. And so we plan out some blog posts and I write a good style guide. And it's really important in your style guide to make sure that you get your images right, because if they upload an image that's 1,000 pixels, but your WordPress is only 800 pixels, then it's going to slow it down in Google. And so that's why in my style guide in section 3.5, I say like we need to have a good picture. So that's the bad way to do it.
Gotcha.
And I hope that you listeners are still here after that. Okay, so now what I can do now is I can say, I take people through the scalable storytelling process, which helps them craft an interesting story and then share it in a scalable way. And so there's 3 steps to this process. The first is discover, where we truly figure out the gold inside of you and your story and your brand and what we do. Once we discover that, then we define it and we write it down in some really clear, really easy to read places that we can share with anybody, and everybody gets on the same page at what's so awesome about you and what's unique about you right away. And then step 3 is delegate, because we don't want to be creating this stuff all the time by ourselves. And so now we can bring on team members, we can bring on writers, we can bring on other people to start telling your story in your voice. And so that gets people, again, a lot more
better.
excited. Way
wow.
better. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was excited about that one. Like I wanted to be part of that story, part of that journey. Whereas the first one, I was like boring, so lost. And so it seems like you want to, it's like you're taking away the pain. Like if in the first version that you told, it's like you're telling us all of the nuts and bolts, all of like the hard work that it takes to actually do something well and to master something. And then if you explain it to them, like right away, they already, the feeling that I got was kind of like, oh, wow. Like I got to worry about pixel sizes, like 1,000 versus 800 and the speed, things to load. But then when you said it the second time, I was like, ooh, like that's so much easier. Like you're going to like help me in this process. And it's like, it's going to basically, it's taking away my pain as a consumer. You're making it easier for me. And and that's why I'm interested then in working with you and your story. It's because like, oh, it feels like it's going to make my life better. Whereas version A was just like, oh, it sounds like you just made my life harder. And I'm not interested in participating in that product.
Exactly.
Wow.
So it's right on, and you can do that. And then what having a process like that is, you can start talking about it in your content. You can start sharing it, and you can have you should have one big one, but you can have a bunch of different small ones. Like everything you do should have some kind of branded process in it. Like I just published a blog post called The Harvest Method, which is my proprietary process for outreach and collaboration with content marketing. And so I've got this process here. I've got a couple of different things. So you can use this over and over again. You should have a big overarching one that's just like, this is my whole business. And then you can start dividing it up into little sections, and it just empowers you in a lot of different ways to talk about what you're doing in an interesting way, no matter how you are engaging with your audience, whether you're talking to them in person, or digitally, like what we are doing, or whether, you're just describing what you do over a podcast, or this could be your video on the About Us page, or it can be, you speaking from the stage. But if you have that tool in place and you understand, then it makes it a lot easier to start creating content, have good ideas, and tell interesting stories.
Beautiful. That's awesome. I love that. And this is the secret recipe, or grandma's lasagna or something?
I should just call it grandma's lasagna. I think that's more interesting, but it's the proprietary process.
The proprietary process. Yeah. In parentheses, grandma's lasagna. Yeah.
Grandma's lasagna. Yes.
Yeah. I might forget the words proprietary processes or whatever, but I'm not going to forget the grandma's lasagna.
Okay, then it's done. Then we've built a new proprietary process right here, live.
Good. I'm glad I could help you out with that. Cool. I mean, you've given a ton of right there, like that's a lot to work on, like right there. And so is there anything else that we have to hear right now in order to make this sort of a complete episode of basics of, like, I don't know, this is like 101. This is like 101. This is, but then it goes into sort of intermediate, like this is important framework. This is sort of like, if you can waste a lot of time and energy and spinning your wheels if you're not thinking about, like, these are like the principles that you've laid out of content marketing. And I'm so thankful to be stepping off on the right foot and not waste a lot of time and energy just putting up random blog posts with images, which takes like a lot of time. Like you said, content takes time. And so we want to make sure that everything we put out there is at least as effective and in alignment with our why, with our vision, and with grandma's lasagna,
Yeah. So I think, we could definitely go on forever with lots of new tactics and strategies, but I think, if you can master this, and you, listener out there, can get a grasp on a couple of these concepts where we've talked about, it's going to make a powerful difference. And actually going through this process and answering these questions, like what you're saying, is going to make a big difference in your own business. And if you can't answer them, then that's a sign that you need to start thinking and take a step back and start exploring some of these things, so you're not just, you're not just trying to hit a piñata with a blindfold in a giant, warehouse. You don't know where it is. It gives you that thing. And I think, I'd just like to close again with kind of the thought I opened with, one of the biggest, there's two really big mistakes that people make. There's kind of a spectrum of what people think content marketing is. And a lot of people just see it as like, I'm putting a blog post up, but they see it like it's a landing page. And so they expect somebody to read a blog post and then immediately convert onto their list and buy something. And it's not like that. And then the other side of it is are these kind of people who really feel like they're kind of artistic creators, and so they kind of see it similarly to a diary or something, where they're like, I'm going to write what inspires me and excites me right now. And sometimes that inspiration isn't always there, and that excitement isn't always there. And so what you need to do is find a middle ground where you are clear on who you are and your why and what's interesting and what is inspiring you. And you have a process and a system so that it's down and it's there and it's listed and you're clear on it. So even when you aren't feeling, super inspired, you can still create. And you're building a real human connection with people. People these days with content, I think, are overly focused on, it needs to get that traffic. It needs to get the SEO. I need those social media searches. Where really, if just one person shows up on your site and reads a couple of your posts, that could create enough of a human connection. And that's what you want it to do. You want to tell your story, and you want to be able to guide people through that story. And so being able to get clear on that and understand that, and balancing out your technical digital marketer side with your artistic inspirado, that's where you're going to find your success in content marketing.
I've got one last question for you that's just dying to know what your thoughts are. And that is like the medium, and what medium you use, and like how to decide like what medium is your strength in. Because there's lots of ways to get your messages out there. You could do stuff on YouTube. You could use like Instagram stories. You can use a traditional blog. You can use email marketing, and a combination of all of the above. Yes. So like, is there ways to know, like, okay, so do you just look at like what people are responding to, what's the engagement is, and then double down on whatever that is?
No, I mean, there's a lot of different approaches here. Sometimes you look at the market and you say, okay, well, everybody's doing podcasts here, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do a video channel. So there's opportunities based on that. A lot of times, sometimes just early adopters of there's always new platforms, new social media tools. And sometimes if you are, this is kind of a gambler's approach, because not every platform becomes, like they're not all turning into Snapchats or Instagrams out there.
Right.
But if you can pick the right one early on and get a really early kind of grasp on that platform, it can be very powerful. I think, again, another thing is like looking at your own unique strengths and your own, even, and your weaknesses too. I like writing because I can do it anywhere I want. And I also can spend time, like what I really enjoy about writing is I can perfect it. I can have other people. I can always update a blog post. If I have a conversation with somebody that teaches me something new about that was on a topic that I was talking about, I can go in and add it to the post and update it. So they're always living, they're always moving. If you're awesome on camera and you have high energy and you're just like super, super charming and interesting person, then definitely go with video. And so there's lots of different approaches. And I wish there was like a really clear like framework or answer, but it varies, varies heavily on the climate that people are in, and then of course the where you're coming from.
Very cool. Yeah, good point. Yeah, good answer, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. So I really am grateful for you, Kyle, for helping me with my business, Monk Messenger bots, and specifically helping physical therapy clinics with chatbots and marketing. And so I want to, and you've clearly shared your expertise and knowledge, and I want people to be able to know like where to go in order to work with you, get your book, The Story Engine. So what's the best way for my listeners to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So you can check out The Story Engine. It's available on Amazon right now if you just search The Story Engine, Kyle Gray. Also, I have a website, thestoryengine.co, and we'll make sure we've got all the links in the show notes for that. But right there I'm building out a blog of my own there. And I've got lots of great content and infographics recently about understanding the buyer's journey and how to tell a story that kind of helps people make all the decisions that they need to make to become a customer of yours, or different other storytelling and relationship building techniques. So there's a lot more that we can dive into. There's a lot more I have to share. And I'm excited to hear from anyone or see what you're doing. You can also reach me on Twitter at Kyle the Gray. I don't really publish on Twitter very much, but anytime somebody reaches out to me, I'm really happy to get in touch and communicate with them.
Cool. And you got to go see this infographic. It turned out so awesome. Like, it's the coolest thing. And so yeah, check it out at thestoryengine.co. So thank you, Kyle. And we'll leave it there. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. I had no idea how it was going to evolve, but I think it turned out great. Thanks.
Thank you, Gabriel. It was an honor.
Okay.